All right. For those of you who don't know, this is our nutritionist, Treves Jansen. Treves is going to talk about stress. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
Ready. Ready, Mickey.
Ready. All right. Thanks, Jerry.
You're welcome.
Did a good job.
Thank you.
Okay, today I'm covering something that I normally don't talk about, although I've lived with it, and so all of you. So we're going to talk about stress and the impact it has on the body, and is all stress bad, or are there some good sides to stress? So stress is an environmental or internal demands that tax our body or exceeds our body's ability to adapt. Or more simply put, it's anything that would disrupt our homeostasis. Our bodies are always seeking homeostasis in everything that we do. So the stress response is a protective mechanism that dates back to the caveman eras in our ancestors. It gave us the ability to run from predators that were trying to kill us. It constricts your pupils. One of the responses is so that you can see things better, we could hunt better. So the problem nowadays with our stress responses is that they are on too much too often. So the stress response originates in the part of our nervous system called the autonomic nervous system, which is responsible for our involuntary functions, such as heartbeat, breathing, things that we can't control. There's two parts to that. One of them is sympathetic, so the sympathetic system, and one is the parasympathetic system. So when it comes to a stress response, sympathetic is like the gas pedal in a car. It's what is the first to respond, that starts the cascade of hormones, the adrenaline, and all that causes the pupillary constrictions, our vessels to contract, blood to divert from our gut to our muscles so that we can run or do whatever we need to do. The parasympathetic nervous system is the braking mechanism, okay? And that's something that we need to learn how to turn on quicker and shut down that sympathetic response. Okay, there's two types of stresses, acute stress and chronic stress. So give me some examples of what you think an acute stress is. We've all had these things in our life. Running late for work, okay. Think bigger. Anybody else? The death of a loved one. Yeah, the death of a loved one. Another acute stress for some people would be the loss of a job, financial strain and all on your family. A disease diagnosis. Right, those are all acute stressors. So what's an example of a chronic stressor? Or the everyday daily hassles? Bad children. Okay. Yeah, your kids could be chronic stress. Definitely. Well, okay. So the nutrition person in me, it thinks of chronic stress as being somebody who has a junk food diet and poor sleep habits. That's chronic stress that your body experiences. Traffic jams. Who in here cannot stand to be in a traffic jam? Drives them nuts. My husband is the same way. It's god-awful. He stresses me out, not the traffic jam, from being involved in that. So if you have your gas pedal down in a car, full force, all the time, what's going to happen?
Run out of gas.
You're going to run out of gas. You're going to blow your engine, possibly. All right? Eventually, right. So that's what I assimilate stress in our bodies. We have to figure out how to put the brake on, and we will talk about that a little bit later. So our ability to deal with those acute stressors comes from the fact of how we deal with our chronic stressors, those everyday little things that occur. So that's where we're going to really focus, because if we can get good at chronic stress, you could better respond to those acute stresses that you really have no control over that happen. So the first thing I want to talk about is your perception of stress. How you perceive stress can directly impact your body's response to stress. They've done many research studies about this. I'm just going to cite a couple of them because I think they're very interesting. So they took 30,000 adults in the United States and had them fill out a questionnaire regarding how much stress that they felt that they had been under in the past year, and did they feel that stress was harmful to their health. And they took those questionnaires and they followed that group for 8 years, and they used public death records at the end to see how many of those people had died and what they had died from. And they found from this research study that people who felt that stress was not harmful to your health and was under a lot of stress at the time had an increase, it had a next to no increase in their death factors in those 8 years. The people who were under a lot of high stress and viewed it as, did I do that right, affecting your health the first time, they had an increased risk, a 43% increased risk of dying in those 8 years. So the people who had a more positive view or perception of stress did better than even people who felt that they had next to no stress and had a negative view. So really that shows that your mind can control and impact how your body responds. Another interesting study that they did was they took housekeepers in 7 hotels across the United States, and they sat them down and asked them, did they feel like they exercise on a regular basis? And they didn't view housekeeping in a hotel as being a strenuous activity. But in fact, you can burn more than 300 calories cleaning for 8 hours a day. So they sat them down, and most of them said they didn't feel like they exercised regularly, and they had a control group of 4 and a group of 4, and then the control group was 3 of the hotels. So they took in the 4 different groups, and they taught them, they hung up posters showing them how all the activities that they did, how many calories it burned, that kind of encouraged and presented the perception to them that they were exercising. And then the other 3, they didn't. So they brought them all back after a month, and believe it or not, the 4 groups that had been taught that they were exercising through their daily work, they found had lost weight, had dropped body fat, and liked their jobs better. So that's how strong perception can be on your body. So influences that might influence your response to stress, they say, is they use the acronym NUTS, which the novelty or the newness of the event that happened to you. Do you have a history where you've had that happen to you before and you knew how to handle it a little bit better? The unpredictable nature of what occurred can affect your response. So was it out of the blue? Something occurred, or did you foresee it coming and had adaptive mechanisms in place? Was it a threat to your body or ego? I think that's a big one that could impact your perception. And then your sense of loss of control over what happened. And they found that it's your sense, not really your ability to control. So did you feel that you had control over what occurred or not? Can impact your stress response. So I'd like to go back and talk about perception being a mindset. So I like to talk about, I always thought of things as negative thinkers and positive thinkers. So a negative thinker, or let's go back to the traffic jam. So, you know, my husband's in there and he sees traffic and all he wants to do is, you know, yell and carry on and try to figure out how I'm going to go around this and how much longer this is going to delay me from getting to my destination. So I kind of take that as he has a negative mindset about a traffic jam. How much can he control the traffic jam? I sit there and say to him, you know, that nobody can hear you but me. You know, all these people out here, and honestly, could you control what happened, that there was construction? Did you know in advance? You know, why do you carry on like this? Because you're stressing me out. You know, I look at it as I couldn't control this. I came upon traffic, so, you know, we have to sit here. What I like to do then is a more positive approach would be to think, okay, well, I have a book with me. I can sit and read. I can catch up on emails on my phone while I'm sitting here. Things that you don't normally have time to do, or you put off till the end of the day. So people who have a mindset that stress is negative and get all hyped up tend to have can have poor coping skills when it comes to that. So they may turn to drinking. Not that drinking, but they turn to drinking to relieve their stress. They turn to procrastinating. They don't want to do something. They don't want to do that hard job, so they keep putting it off and putting it off. So those are kind of some of the less responses or coping mechanisms you have in place. Whereas, when you look at different stress events, take for example the loss of a job, which I think is significant, then, look at it as maybe being, when one door closes, another one opens. Maybe it's time for you to take up a dream that you had and change your career path into something else. Instead of looking at it that it's personal on you, you're a failure, that you can't overcome what's happened to you. People who have a more negative outlook or view stress as a negative thing, they imagine the worst case scenarios. They project that even though, nothing's happened, what if that happens? And how much of that can you really control in your life? If you're imagining all these worst things, you can't begin to problem solve on what's occurring right then and in that moment in your life and figure out how you're going to overcome what's happened right now. So those are some of the things that that we need to look at when we are looking at our response to stress. Something else that everybody needs to become used to is to stay mindful when something like a daily hassle happens, and feel, it's okay to feel the way you feel, but then you have to figure out how you're going to overcome that. Don't stay feeling in that moment and just sit there and perseverate on that and take it personal and that your life's, a failure, all bad things happen to you all the time. Maybe it's the fact that, you need to look to problem solve that and get past that so that you can move on and learn and grow from things that happen to you. And then you'll view yourself as being better able to handle the things that happen. Another example would be just a couple of weeks ago, our hot water heater blew up late in the day. And, my husband was we knew we were on borrowed time. Our hot water heater was 19 years old. Who gets 19 years out of a hot water heater? We saw many people sit in hot water heaters by their curb in our subdivision, and we're like, wow, ours is still going, and you kind of forget about it. And, he was getting ready to come up here for class, and it was like 10 minutes before class, and I kind of called him. I said, Jerry, you need to come down here. We got a problem, because we had water from the hot water heater all the way to the wall, because it had been leaking for some time. It didn't just quit working, but we had all these boxes of stuff that we had never unpacked when we moved in our house 19 years ago. So anyway, he comes downstairs and he looks at it and he goes, oh my God, I guess I'm not going to class, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. This has been leaking for days. What's 45 minutes gonna, go on and go to class? Because see, he's not of my mindset where you need to exercise and you need to do this for yourself. He always looks how to get out of that kind of stuff. So I'm like, Dare, go on and go to class. It'll be all right. It's not gonna, you're not gonna be able to fix it in 45 minutes. Just go on and go, and I'll work on, this. So, and that's what he did. And so even though that was kind of like me, what I'm thinking of is, oh my God, I got to work tomorrow. I got 2 clients to meet. I got to be able to take a shower in the morning. I'm packing my suitcase and going to a hotel. That was my first gut response. And then I'm like, no, Treves, think about this. You can boil water. Kate was, she's like, do you really have to have a shower every day? And I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. But it's like, right away, I'm like, okay, how can I fix this issue I'm going to have in the morning not having a shower. So I'm going and thinking I'll boil water on the stove, and it'll be all right. I can do this. So by the time he came back, we kind of start cleaning up the mess and start going through these boxes, and we found all kinds of, just incredible stuff that you had completely forgotten about. Children's books that you had saved from your kids, high school. It was kind of fun because then it kind of lightened up and you got to laughing and looking at this kind of things. And we would have never ever looked in them boxes if this hadn't happened. And then the other thing that came to me was, it made me think of my great-grandmother, because she lived down in Kentucky, and when we would go down there and spend summers with her, she didn't have a bathtub or a shower. She had a toilet and a sink, and she had a stove to heat water on. And so we took baths out in wash tubs on the patio as kids, and we thought that was a lot of fun. So it brought back all those memories, something that was stressful to me at the time.
Did you take a bath out on the patio?
Not up here, no. No, I didn't. But I'm just saying, it made me think of my great-grandmother who died many years ago, and some of the fond memories of going down to her place and living without hot water. It's like, how convenient is that? That's something we take for granted. So it's all about your perception of the stresses that happen to you. So some techniques to use when stressful things happen, like those daily little hassles, is, I think this is pretty cool, is you need to expand your time horizon. So when something happens, such as your hot water heater blowing up and setting you off track, is you think, really, how much will this matter a month from now to me? Well, I think back and remember on, Tuesday, May 11th, that my hot water heater blew up. Or better yet, think forward to sitting in a rocking, they call it the rocking chair test. Sitting in a rocking chair when you're 100 years old, looking back on your life, what are you going to remember? Will you remember those little stresses that happen to you every day? So that's one thing you can do. The other thing would be to increase your sense of control over what's occurred. So sit back and think, what can I focus on now that I can control? Because there's many things in our lives that we have no control over. So focus on what you can control and then come up with an action plan to do that. Stay mindful when you're in that moment. Don't react from your gut. Don't run away. If you stay mindful and sit there, and one of the ways we'll talk about staying mindful is through deep breathing, then you can better come up with problem-solving skills to overcome that stress. The other thing would be to reframe the situation and ask yourself if the feelings you're having, question the beliefs that occurred out of the stress event. So, if you believe that, you lost your job because you're a poor performer, or your boss just doesn't like you, ask yourself, are those real? Is that real, or is that an assumption that you're putting on yourself? If you had good evaluations and it was just the fact that the company, needed to cut positions and yours was a position that was cut, then don't take it personal that, you're a bad person or you were picked out. It was just the way it happened. And embrace threats as challenges. So when you look at those types of things, ask yourself, how can, all right, so this happened to me. I can't do anything about it. It's out of my control. What can I do? And take that on as a challenge. If it means, that you got a poor grade on a test that you took, well, did you prep for it enough? Do you need to look and say, okay, I'm weak in English. I need to work harder there, and I need to focus on that area so that I can be better at that the next time around. So the next thing I want to talk about is something that I struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of people in here do, is taking on too many things at one time. If you take on too many things to do in a short time frame, you've just created what they call time compression syndrome in your life. And that's not a good place where you want to be. So if you are trying to do too many things at one time, you're probably not doing anything very well. And all you're doing is stressing yourself out. So I think everybody needs to, it's difficult to say no to somebody. So what kind of feelings does it bring up if you tell your boss, no, I can't stay and work late today? What's the first thing that might go through your mind? That you're not a team player? That, okay, this is going to come back to me somewhere down the line? Or you have a friend who asks you to do something that you just can't do. You don't have time to do it. You work full time and you have plans that day and you have to tell them no. It's hard. It's really hard because you think you're letting the person down. Maybe they won't ask you the next time they need something and you would have time to do that. So I think saying no is difficult. And I think it's based on the fact that society has made it seem like laziness is not a good thing. You're just pounding in your head. You got to be productive. You got to work hard. You got to do everything because you might miss out on something. And I know from the workplace, that's pounded in our heads is we got to be productive and you got to do more with less people, and you tend to let that spill over into your personal life. And you do the same thing at home. So you have to step back and practice saying no, and know that it's okay to do that once in a while. And the way that I look at it, which I think I read about this, it was pretty cool. So on average, we have 2.5 billion heartbeats in our lifetime. And they say on average, we spend about 100,000 of them every day. So when somebody asks you to do something, you should think about where are you spending your heartbeats? And are you doing what you want to do with them? Many years ago when I was the endoscopy coordinator, I worked full time. I had kids in high school. They played multiple sports. And I was on call every other day. And we were in there working every other day after hours. And it got to be, it was a great job and I really loved it, but the fact of the matter was I sat down and I computed out the hours and where I spent my hours, and I saw what few hours I really had to spend with my kids who were 15 and 16 and weren't going to be around much longer. And that gave me the ability to go in and look for another job and leave a job that I really enjoyed because I wanted to spend my heartbeat someplace else. So that's something that I think that everybody should ask themselves every day. And if somebody asks you to do something and you don't feel like, heck yeah, I want to do that, then maybe you need to kind of take a few moments and not respond right away and sit back and think about it and then be all right saying no to people. So the last thing.
Along those lines,
yes.
I'm actually following somebody on a website right now, and she described that exactly. And what she learned to do was she uses like a Google Calendar, and she calendarizes all of that out, and it actually showed her in front of, visualized for her how much time she was committing to everything and
yes.
everybody else.
Yes.
So she actually used that to create pockets of her calendar that was her time, doing exactly what you said. It's like having to reprioritize. Telling people no. If you don't want to do it, or if you have other things that you should be doing, and actually even calendarizing your time.
Exactly, because your time for yourself gets pushed down very, very small. And when that happens, then, I think that it's very hard for you to have the energy to do all the things that you truly want to do and, feel like you can and feel rest and relaxed and not all hyped up all the time and just running around like crazy. You're going to be a better employee, you're going to be a better parent, a better spouse, just a better person in general if you have some downtime for yourself, a little each day, where you do something that relaxes you, rejuvenates you, or just turns your mind around and gets it focused back where it needs to be. And you do need a visual sometimes.
Yeah, you can do it at work too. I mean, one of the things that I've done in the last couple months is I told Jerry about this. I call it the rule of three. I didn't invent it. I actually read about that too. I actually choose three things. It's just habit based. I choose three things I do a couple things first thing in the morning when I get to work, and one of the things is I choose 3 things I'm going to get done that day. And the rule is that if your boss comes to you and says, hey, I need you to, then you allow yourself, you give yourself the right to replace one of those. But if nobody's telling you, your boss doesn't come to you and say, hey, I need you to do X, then you follow that Bible. You follow that rule of 3, and you get those 3 things done. Because if you're trying to juggle getting 6 things done at one time, you'll get part of 6 things done and 0 of 6 things done in the course of that day.
Exactly.
So it works at work too.
And you know, the other thing, working and living like that day in and day out wears you down.
You can't be Superman for everybody, and that's hard for me to say because I am. But there's a levity. But you can't be Superman for every person every day.
No. Right.
So, I mean, it does force you to slow down.
And I think in our world today, we need something to force us to slow down, because you can get wrapped up into.
Yeah, and there's a difference between slowing down and lazy. There's a big difference between that. You have to figure out what that is for you.
Are you saying I'm lazy, Kevin?
We'll talk after this.
Oh.
But you just have to figure out what that difference is.
Well, sure,
right?
sure, exactly. Well,
doing things for you and doing nothing. There's a big difference. So.
Right, and you know, I like to do everything very well, so I can't do too many things at one time. I'm methodical.
Very methodical.
Yes. So we're going to talk about how do we put the braking system on, okay, when we're stressed. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, but one very easy way to do this is through breathing. Breathing is very important. Deep, slow breathing is important, and it's very healing for our bodies. Our breathing is our life force. All life begins and ends with breathing, so we need to get better at breathing. Majority of our breathing is shallow upper chest breathing, which is what we do day in and day out. So when you're stressed out, I'll teach you this technique, so bear with me. Okay, you want to, when you're stressed out, what will help you stay mindful in the moment and just give you enough pause that you can stand back and say, okay, you know, what can I do about what's just happened, is just to sit and take some deep breaths. It gives you just some space and just time to do those kinds of things. So what you want to do is put your tongue on the back of your front teeth, okay, and take it back to they call it the alveolar ridge, which is that hump that goes up into your palate. Okay, so you should be sitting up straight, nice and relaxed. Loosen any tight clothing that you might have on. And don't take your clothes off. So close your eyes, and you want to inhale through your nose to a count of 4. Take a nice deep breath in to a count of 4. Exhale it out through your mouth to a count of 8. And you want to do that 4 times. Okay, so what you've just done through that activity is you have stimulated the vagus nerve, which connects your sympathetic to your parasympathetic nervous system. What's important to remember is inhaling through your nose trips that. Okay, that's why you want to take those nice deep breaths through your nose and exhale it out through your mouth. You've just put the brakes on your stress response by doing that. That's something that you can do anywhere, anytime, okay? So that's why I try to tell my husband in the next traffic jam, let's do some deep breathing, Jerry.
With the eyes open.
I was going to say,
well, no, because we're sitting still. We're sitting still.
I'm in that same traffic jam, make sure that you're stopped.
Well, you would be if it's a jam, right? So what you've just done is that's how you turn the brakes on, okay? I would recommend that you create this as a habit that you do every day. You can start your morning off when you first wake up before you ever get out of bed. Practice that. Okay, a good time to do it also is at night before you're going to bed. That might be the better time to do that because it helps to relax you and de-stress yourself from all that you've done that day. So if you make that a habit, you can better apt to call upon that when your boss is coming in, Kevin, and telling you, I want you to stay till 7 o'clock tonight and I need 5 reports on my desk by then. You're not going home. And then you can say, okay, I'm going to do some deep breathing right now and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, let me get some deep breathing.
Yeah, please leave my space and do some deep breathing and let me get back to you on that.
I might have more time to work out by the next day.
So anyway, so that's the end of my talk. If you have any questions, I'm by no means an expert at this. It's not nutrition, but anyway.
So things to do for traffic jams, and this actually, hey, this actually works for me, and I don't know if anybody has this opportunity, but if I'm feeling like edgy in the morning, I haven't, what are you laughing at, Scarlata?
Are you talking next?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If I'm feeling edgy in the morning, that I have alternate ways to work that don't include the interstate.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jerry and I have talked about this a couple of times where I will take that alternate way which has some green space to it.
Yes.
And it might take me an extra 10 minutes, but it's 10 minutes I would have spent on the interstate anyway. So I'll just take that way and you eliminate that's just an example for traffic jams. Everybody gets weirded out by traffic jams.
Sure. Something else that I do at my job is, funny you bring up the color green, is I try to eat my lunch outside because the color green and being in contact with nature is very relaxing and it's calming. So if I go out and I eat my lunch on the bench, even though it's over in the hood, there is a little patch of green grass there and some pretty flowers that, I feel like I can, okay, I can do the second half of this day. I've gone out there and eaten my lunch and I've been in, experienced nature and been outside and around green. Something else that you can do is and I just talked to Jerry about this yesterday, so we have a plan for the window in the office. Is to bring nature into your house. It is beneficial, they have found, to bring in and buy fresh flowers every week and just put them on your kitchen table. Or take up gardening. What are you laughing about?
What your son and
I
flowers.
thought about that for about 8 seconds a number of years ago, and I did all the stuff you have to do a thing. It's another job.
Gardening? Not if you just grow some house plants in your house. You have one plant. Buy a cactus that doesn't need a lot of water. Something that doesn't need a lot of care, but you're bringing nature into you, and it's been proven that it helps your environment, and your environment creates stress or de-stresses you.
So just open the window.
Yeah, you can open the windows and listen to the birds and all of that. So there's a lot of benefit to that. I worked in the intensive care unit, and I wondered why we had ugly green counters and green walls. And that's where I first learned they purposefully painted the intensive care unit green because it was calming for patients. Even though it looked frightening when you first went in there because it was a lot of green, but then you understand that.
That's why people are generally more stressed and edgy in the wintertime.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's no green. Even if you're out, you're now out and among.
It's gray and it's white.
How much different do you feel when you first see the stuff coming out in spring? Even your worst days aren't nearly as bad.
Right. So, and the sun and all of that. So those are just some things that you can do. What?
My husband is a wildlife and landscape artist, and we have his paintings on our walls. We have the most peaceful household. There's no stress when I go home.
Right.
He does cut flowers from the garden, and that is what he wants to do, and it brings peace and joy. So I totally agree with what you're saying.
There's one more thing I forgot to talk about is a little known stress, and I really want to talk about this because this is cool. A little known stress hormone that's released is oxytocin. We don't think of oxytocin as being a stress hormone, but it is. It's the cuddle hormone. It's what is released when you hug. Everybody knows that, but the fact that you release oxytocin in a stressful event is it protects your cardiovascular system. That's what it's meant to do. You know, when you're under stress, your vessels are tight and tighten down and constrict, and the oxytocin keeps them, they've studied this, keeps them dilated. It's really incredible, and they said it's more of the reaction that they see in joy and courage is what oxytocin does as a stress response. It's what makes us want to seek out to share the stressful event with people and to look for your social support. Friends that you can turn to when something bad's happened and talk about it. And it benefits your cardiovascular system. So I think we need to be more aware of that, and we need to use that benefit to protect our hearts and to keep, you know, us stress resilient is what you really are trying to build yourself to be. Okay. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
All right. If no one has any more questions, thank you guys for coming today. Thank you for taking a couple hours out of your beautiful Saturday to hang out with us. If you're not a member here and you have any questions about that, you're welcome to hang out and ask. If you have any questions for Chris and I or Kevin.
Hey, now. I'm just trying to help.
Then you can ask as well. But thank you guys for coming. I appreciate your time. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.